Hello. Can you guys all hear me? Those of you that are here, I'm going to assume you can. Welcome. I'm doing my final pass on the morgane characters for the class. And I'm going to talk about how this class is going to wrap up. So please, I'm just going to do what I did last time because it feels a lot easier this way. I'm going to just scroll through the forum on the window, and you guys can watch. And I'm going to talk about people's work as I go through. So hopefully this works out for you guys, and yeah, I'm going to get going on it. So basically, I had a post in here explaining how the rest of this class is going to go. So let me, I don't want to say something that is in opposition to what I put on the forum because I laid it out. But yeah, we're going to talk about okay, so here it is. So basically, I'm going to do a crit stream for the Morganes tonight. It's going to be kind of short. It's going to be basic feedback because we've already talked about them, and I just want to, move forward. I mentioned that because I want you guys to think about these characters in a new, different, more in-depth way, that I'll give you more time, and I am giving you more time. So that's what's going to happen. I'm going to talk about this, and then it's going to be due next Sunday, which I understand is right before Christmas. If it's busy and it's a little late, that's okay. I want you to get it done and have it look good. But they are going to be due next Sunday, so have them more or less finished by then. So basically, then after that, which is the week of Christmas, I don't want you to do a lot. I want you to sketch your idea for the Mordred character. That's all I'm asking for. I'll introduce him next Sunday. So that'll be, I'll do a stream and I'll talk about his character in depth next Sunday. I don't want you guys to start him now and get ahead of yourselves. Then you'll have a week just to do sketches, thumbnails for him. You don't need to do anything tight, just how we're reapproaching this from a drawing point of view, because again, I've repeated this on the past couple streams. One thing I learned in the process of this class is that people are making most of their mistakes by jumping into finish way too soon. And they're not really exploring things like anatomy, pose, design. Early on in lines, they're committing to doing like a fully sculpted painting very early on. So I just want sketches for the Mordred. Then you'll have a second week to really finish, tighten them up, get it all down and get it towards the final. This is going to be basically, I've put it back about a week. So basically, you're going to want to have him sketched out, and then I'm going to give you another week to tighten him up. And then what I'm going to do is, this is kind of weird, but I think this is for the best. I'm going to give you guys a third week, and I either want you to finish your Mordred, or I want you to go back to your weakest character or characters and bring them up to speed with all the stuff you've learned throughout the class. The idea being that 3 weeks from today, hopefully, you will have a very polished, updated look at all the work you did in this class. Then I'll do a final stream. I'll be talking about my next class, which I can actually, this was like an experiment to figure out if the mentoring thing was going to work on here. I think it has, more or less. I've got a pretty good idea for how to improve it the next class, though. So I'm going to do a final stream. We're going to look at everybody's work. We're going to talk about what people learned, which people made the biggest leap, hopefully get some feedback from you guys on the forums. I want to open a Q&A. Was this helpful? Why was it helpful? Why wasn't it helpful? Get as much feedback from you guys as possible, then have a stream and talk about all that, talk about improving it, talk about what people learned, what they were hoping to learn that they didn't, and have a nice, finish. So that's what I want to do. So yeah, so with that being said, I'm going to go in here and look at what people are doing. I can't remember what I have and haven't looked at. I think, well, basically, I can just, if I remember correctly, I can just go back to where I uploaded the last video, and that'll be the last thing I said. So I think it's down here. Yeah, here it is. Okay. So everything after this I can talk about. Drinking my water. Okay, so Zipl Zeus, you're first up. Um, Coloring with no grayscale. That's good. I'd say your colors are still. Let me pull this into preview here so you can see a bit better as I talk about it. Your colors are still falling in a really neutral range. I like what you're doing with the dual light sources, but they're not really affecting anything besides the two sides of the cloak. We mentioned last time that this character was kind of falling into a very kind of Cruella de Vil kind of sculpted look. It still very much feels that way, and I'm learning now that the two biggest problems you have are the core drawing, the anatomy, and the second biggest problem you have is the color. Because even without grayscale, I'm seeing that your colors still look very desaturated and they still look very gray. So I don't know if you're doing daily studies. If you have time to do them, you should be. The two things that you're going to want to work on are anatomy, tons of anatomy, and tons of direct observational color studies. That means putting something in front of you and replicating the colors from life. Studying from photos is good, but you're going to learn way more if you set things up in front of you. In terms of this design, we already talked about it. I like the changes you've made. I think you have a tighter version of it later, though, so I'm not going to get too much into this. I think I saw another one. So, actually, from here out, let me start at page 18 so I can see the most finished things you've put up. That's a better idea. Alright, Jake B. I know you jumped in, or at least I think I remember you were one of the people that jumped into rendering too soon. This is one of those things where I got to give you an honest, tough crit. I don't want to lie to people on here because I am trying to teach. This is a mentorship. The design of this character is very boring. It looks like, a woman wearing the kind of clothes that a person in that culture would wear, but there's no twists. I'm not seeing anything exciting that breaks the mold. I'm not seeing any real innovation. It is an accurate cultural portrayal of what the person would wear, but it has that tacked on problem where if she wasn't holding a fireball in between her hands, it would just feel like a normal woman. You're not integrating a sense of like mysticism or magic into the design of the character, so the spell just becomes desperate. What I mean by that is like you have a design that isn't working and you're like, oh shit, wait, it's supposed to be magical. What can I do to make this look magical? Let's just give her a fireball. That'll do the trick. That's not what you want to do. You want to have it work without the spell. Things like adding a pet, things like adding a magic spell, things like giving them a huge distracting weapon, those are desperate things, and when art directors look at those, they automatically know, unless it's worked in like an intentional, smart, well-thought way, they go, oh, they knew the design was boring, so they added this distraction. So the piece automatically becomes about the fireball, it's not about the character. All that does is make our eye look at that really bright spot and ignore the fact that the rest is kind of bland. So in the next one, try to make a really satisfying design just with lines and a pencil. Try to make something that looks interesting, that conveys all the aspects of the character in the beginning, without jumping into rendering, without adding things like flash and spells and big silly weapons and pets. Like, make something that can stand on its own, and only then add things that are tacked on. If it doesn't work without them, then you might as well not move forward. This is Thomas's work. Let me pull this in and blow it up. Thomas is one of my students in here. And Thomas, this is easily your best character out of the three that you've done. I see a huge improvement here. In terms of the design, in terms of the application of the culture, in terms of the lighting and the mood. See, with something like this is the opposite of what I was just talking about, and hopefully you guys can see that and learn from it. Because he made an interesting design without the snake first, when he puts the snake monster on it, it multiplies the coolness. It makes it even more interesting because the snake becomes an echo of the design. So, if you took the snake away, it would still be a strong design. It would still be this very, very pale, kind of ghostly woman. She'd have these very serpentine, flowing fabrics. All of the fabric is curling in a way that mimics the snake idea. Even the hair is curling at the sides. It's got this very eerie color to it, and it's playing on, you know, complements of purple and green. So even without the snake, this is a design that works. Adding in the snake to multiply that very serpentine look and to get even more flow and to accentuate those things and give it this very creepy ghost lighting makes it even better, because the design is so good on its own that you can add those things to it to give it a flourish. Okay, so hopefully you see the difference between this and the other one. If you guys look between them, and again, I'm not doing this to be mean. I really want you to understand that. I'm doing this because I want you guys to learn. So I'm going to put these next to each other. And hopefully if you're watching this on YouTube or on demand or something, if you look at these two designs next to one another, can you see why Thomas's is stronger without this? Because the spell doesn't look tacked on in Thomas's. That very curling, I'll follow my mouse here, that very curling serpentine pattern that wraps around the body and envelops the character is mimicked here, it's mimicked here, it's mimicked here. You know, even the tendrils coming off the sides of this thing are mimicked in the headdress. The hair is very flowing and serpentine. Even the bottom of the dress curls out of the ground. You know, so this works. Over here, if you take the fireball away, try to imagine this without the fireball. There's nothing in the costume that tells me this is a magician. There's nothing there. The character doesn't work without the flourish, so there's no point in adding it. I hope that makes sense. I want you to learn from that. Things to improve, Thomas. I'm not going to do a paint over, but I am going to talk about, you know, I am going to crit you. The only reason I'm not going to do a paint over is because I have a lot of people to get through, but she still looks very masculine, and she still looks very Caucasian. So one thing I want you to do very badly is to just pick an actress and use her features. I want you to study an actress's face and try to apply those nuances into this character. It's very easy to find somebody to use for this. There's all kinds of movies about this time period and this kind of culture that you can borrow from. But the big things are the eyes are imbalanced. One's a little smaller than the other one. They're a little bit cross-eyed. She's not really looking forward. The pupils are too far into the middle. The nose is very, very big. These very Japanese kind of geisha women, they have very dainty features, very small, non-intrusive noses. You know, the lips usually aren't huge. Even with the makeup, the lips are usually very small. This is a product of just drawing men all the time, and that's why I knew this character was going to be the hardest for everybody. It just looks like you're used to drawing men. So that very barbarian featured, kind of like, you know, I draw a lot of orcs features comes into the women, and it makes them feel very awkward. So keep in mind this character is supposed to be very pretty. She's a seductress. Okay, that's the idea. So that's really the big thing I want you to work on. Other things you could include, and this is nitpicking. Overall with this character, I really like the feel, I really like the flow, I like the color, I like the design. But one thing I want you to look at, because of how you've lit this girdle, it doesn't look like it's part of her body. It looks like it's cut and pasted on top of it because the light doesn't work. It doesn't look like it's wrapping around her because the edges have highlights instead of sinking into shadow. You have to darken the edges of this and let them wrap around her body. Putting specular highlights on the edges of the girdle, even though technically that might be how it works, makes it look like it's jumping forward off the character. It doesn't sit in space. You want to soften these edges. You want to darken them. And you want to let the front of it be the brightest because that's the part that's closest to us. So think of her body like, you know, like a can or a bottle. These sides have to wrap around. They have to fade as they go away from the eye. The focus is in the center. The other thing about this girdle is that it's super defined like the crown, which of course detail is good, but the most detailed parts of a piece are going to jump forward. So what that means is this entire piece right now is about the girdle. And I hope you can see what I mean, because the highest point of contrast on the piece is that there's dark spots all around the girdle, and then there's these 4 white points. And it makes it jump forward. It makes this illusion where that's the most forward, that's the most important thing on the piece. It's right in the center. surrounded by dark, it's cornered with light. You want to lose some of that so it really becomes about this sweet spot up here. Because right now you've got competing focal points. Um, but yeah, this is the kind of crit that I want to give you, though. This isn't a fundamental, the design doesn't work, you got to go back to square one. Like, this isn't that kind of crit. This is a crit where you've got all the right things in all the right places, but you have to now blend them in such a way that they sit harmoniously. There's nothing wrong with this design. It's just that some things need to be lost and other things need to be perfected. So the face needs to be worked on, the girdle needs to be washed over a bit. And I think the snake could use some more detail, at least in the face. I think you should pop that forward a bit more. Other things, let's see. I really like how you're working the patterns in here. So you're not using harsh lines, you're kind of stitching them in, which works really well. I would bring these colors into this part of the neck. See these two pieces that wrap around here below the black part? Bring these colors from the trim into that, because that part of the robe is trim. It makes no sense to have it down here on three of them and then not have them in there. You want to bring this eerie kind of color into the face to balance the character, because right now, below the girdle, that's the only spot that color happens. You don't have it up here, so it imbalances the piece. The last thing I would say, you've got this gemstone in here and it looks really cool, but there's nothing in the crown. If you're going to have a stone down here, put one in the crown to balance it out, or put three in the crown. The crown is just wrought silver right now, and having a gemstone down here and not mirroring that color and that specular up here in this very empty hole right there, right above her eyes, feels like a missed opportunity. It would be a much stronger piece if that was repeated up here. So that's really it. There's not a lot in here to fix. You have to, wrap the girdle, lose the edges, blend that, bring the stone up into the crown, make the face prettier and more Japanese, and then bring this silk trim with this cool color that you have going on up in here. And that's really it. Maybe make more features on the snake's face. But I really like the design, I really like the lighting, and I hope you can see that this is an improvement over your last two. That's the biggest thing I want to get across, is that this is better because you planned it out early on. This is much stronger than the Arthur and the Merlin. But yeah. Let's see. So you pull this into here. And apologies again if I don't spend as much time on yours as I did on someone else's. That's only because I am supposed to be teaching 3 people in here. I try to make time for everybody else as best I can. Apologies. Okay, things that are working and things that aren't working. The body. See, this is one of those things where I feel like you didn't use lines. You might have. I haven't scrolled up and looked yet, but this doesn't feel like, even if you had drawn it, you didn't fix it after you drew it. You didn't check the anatomy. You didn't have somebody crit it. Yeah, Thomas, you just missed it. I'm sorry. So it's extremely, like, look how wide her face is. It's this wide all the way through the torso. It's like insanely thin. So I'm not really going to crit it because it doesn't look like you planned it out. I'll talk about the design, but the drawing's completely off. You have to draw on top of it, okay? So the body's just not there. She's just stickly thin. And, I get the argument a lot of times, well, if you look at thin, I wanted her to be thin. Look at thin women. That's what thin women look like. Yeah, but she's wearing 4 layers of clothing. Presumably she's wearing an undershirt, then she's wearing this dress, then she's wearing a coat on top of it, then she has the flourish on top of the shoulder pads. So if you take away 4 layers of clothing, she's actually this thin, because that's how thick the clothing is. So she's actually skinnier than the width of her face, which means she's dead. Okay? So that's stuff you have to think about. It's disgustingly skinny, to the point where she is only like a spine wearing clothes. The design, I do like this big collar. I like the curled thing up here. That works well. I like the turned body where the legs are going this way, the upper torso is going this way, and then the diagonal cutting it. That's a good pose. The design's cool, the pose is cool, there's things you could improve, but until you fix the body, I'm not going to give you any more of a crit because that's the biggest problem. Yes, there's things you could fix with the design. Yes, I'm willing to talk about those later, but until you fix the anatomy, it's all pointless. Let's see. This is Arthur. I can't talk about those. I'm sorry. That was ages ago. Values from morgane. Changes to Arthur. Okay, so let's talk about this real quick. Okay, so I mean, this pose you have for 2 and 3, I would like it if you had the anatomy there, but the anatomy's not there. The anatomy's not even in 1. One thing that you're getting wrong is the length of the human leg. So if her arm is diagonal here, that means that when it falls flat, it would be here. That's where it would be, right there. Which means that her feet would be here, which it doesn't make any sense. It's not tall enough. You need to extend the bottom of the character pretty much to where the bottom of the page is. If this dress was going all the way to the bottom of the page, I wouldn't have a problem with this. This is one of those things where, like, it looks like her feet were amputated. It looks like, her feet should be coming out of the bottom here because it's just that amount of space. Look how much bigger the upper part of the body is compared to the lower part of the body. It's like this big rectangle, and then it's like this very stunted square down here. In terms of design, I like the design you have going on in 1 and 3 better because the one in the middle looks way too much like a Santa Claus robe. That's something you have to watch out for. As cool and appropriate as you might think the trim is there, it just reads as Santa Claus. I would go with these other 2 designs. They feel much more evil, and she is an evil character. But you have to fix the anatomy. Let's see. Alright, page 17. Talked about that. Talked about these. Okay. This one. Nimo. What up? So this is cool. One thing I think you should play up, like I was talking about with Thomas, if you're going to have the snake monster thing, use more serpentine patterns in her body. I see that you have one on the knife, and that's cool, but how about something zigzagging through the stomach? How about making this thing hanging from her waist more curly, like it's snake-like? How about actually stitching a snake pattern into the dress? How about having her hair come off in these very serpentine rivulets? I would make the snake mimic the arm more, so if you're following my mouse on the recording, have it come up behind like this and then strike forward from back here. Having it do this weird thing here, it looks like a sausage machine, like squishing out hamburger or something. It doesn't feel the way a snake would move. So what you'd want to do is have the arch, if you can see my mouse, have the arch go behind the arm, towards the face, then shoot forward like the arm. You want it to follow that thrust of her hand, because right now it feels very, very awkward. Having it curl and then go straight and then over, it's just very, very strange. So yeah, just one curl and then a strike. Right there. Curl, strike. Curl, strike. But yeah, then unify the design. Bring the snake, because I see you're using snake like little snake symbols and stuff. That's cool and that works, but you need a big curled thing somewhere. Have it running down between the breasts into the belt. Have it stitched onto here. Have the hair flowing behind her or something to mimic that snake shape. You just need another curled shape somewhere to balance it out. In terms of the anatomy, this could work if she was a very short, pudgy woman. I say that delicately because when I'm looking over here at the lines, yes, you did draw the lines under the costume, but things like the thighs are extremely wide. The legs are extremely stunted. The torso is very much crunched down. I don't know if you're compromising for the angle you tried to draw her at, but she just feels stunted. it feels like she should be, another head taller, and that everything should be stretched in accordance. Um, this is almost something you could fix with a free transform if you then shrunk her head back down, because the way you've drawn the head is actually very good. But these arms feel very short and very pudgy. The torso feels very short and very pudgy, and the legs, especially the thighs, feel very short and very pudgy. But I do like the design. Let's see. Emily posted something. Um, Struggling with poses for Morgane. Different designs for her clothes. Let me come back to that. Let's see. So, okay. Did he have other ones on here? Okay, I'm gonna pull all these into here, just so we can look at the evolution of where this has gone. Because I know you were struggling with the pose. I gave you kind of a harsh crit last time, so I want to be fair. And again, guys, when I give these crits, I know I say this all the time, but I'm always worried people take them very to heart. I'm just trying to help and instruct. So if I say something that sounds really harsh, it's because I need you to understand that big changes have to happen. Okay, so first off, this is a huge improvement over your first one, which was this. Let me pull this in here so we can look at this. Okay, so a little confusing. Between these two, night and day, this one is more Japanese. This one, we were talking, felt very Greek. You've improved a lot already. The face still feels kind of Caucasian to me, and this foot is incredibly small. It's actually the same size as the hand. This is that thing where like you really need to look at the anatomy. But I see that you have a new design here, so let's talk about that. I mean, this is a good move in terms of you're evading something, and I just want to call you out on it because I see it. You're not comfortable drawing the human leg, and I know you're not, and you're covering it up. Now, because this is Japan, and because you've chosen to make her this kind of geisha woman, covering up the leg actually works because women didn't really show their legs in this culture. That was kind of like a hidden thing that added to the allure. So this is like a get out of jail free card for your design. Yes, it does work to cover up the legs, so you don't have to draw them in this case. But in the future, you need to work on your anatomy, and you need to work specifically on the leg. Another thing I'm seeing is that you don't know how to foreshorten the body in space. That's a really big thing that I want you to work on if you're doing studies. Things like, this hand is closer to us than this hand over here, but it's half as big. Things like she's turning and this arm is thrown behind her, but the hand is bigger than the hand in the foreground. So this is an effect, people call it fly swatting a lot, where it looks like the character's flat because things that are farther away are actually bigger than things in the foreground, and vice versa. So if you get the size wrong when you're turning the body, it actually makes an illusion that everything's flat on a page because, this hand should be significantly smaller than this hand. And having them both be open creates this very weird thing where it looks like you copy-pasted the hand over there and it just looks kind of flat. In terms of the design, if you're moving forward, I don't mind that she has this skirt now, but this design over here is a lot more exciting for a lot of reasons, and I want you to think about that when you finish it. These animals being stitched into the dress, I want you to bring those over into this one. I think they should be there. The longer tails, I think you can extend these tails hanging from the side. I like that. The headdress here with the horns, I think you can even bring that back. I like the haircut you have here and the thing going through it with the hanging elements. But bringing the crown back over, I think, works. Having the rope tied around the waist on top of the girdle breaks up that tension a lot. I think that works. So yeah, bring over the elements that made this one cool into this one. Even the couple strands of hanging hair might be cool to break it up. But first you gotta make the drawing not so flat. You gotta fix those hands, and you gotta make sure the body looks like it's turning. I know you wanted to draw the leg to make it sexy, but keep in mind that sex for sex's sake isn't what makes a good design. Um, it's like, a lot of game companies, and this is where I might insult an artist you like, and I'm sorry if you like it, but things like games like God of War, where they take a culture and they're like, this is the masculine version because he's not wearing any armor and he's got huge muscles. This is the sexy female because we took almost all of her clothes off and you can see her legs and she's got huge tits. That's really bad design. It's really cheap design and it plays to the lowest common denominator of the audience. People look at that and they go, oh, they weren't confident with how the woman looked, so they inflated the breasts, so I would be forced to see the sex. That's the thing, is like, it's very, very interruptive. I want to appreciate the design and look at it and go, oh, she's kind of mysterious and beautiful, and she's very closed off, and it's this very kind of mysterious sex appeal. Like, that's what you want. You want something that's seductive and mysterious with this character. You don't want, like, hey, what's up? I work at a peep show. Check out my leg. Here's my cleavage. Like, she's very highborn, and she's very mystic, and, like, you can make something sexy without showing all the good parts of the body. That's the thing I'm trying to convey, is you can make something very alluring and you can draw people in without showing any of that stuff. So challenge yourself to do that, because the easiest thing in the world to do is show a girl's leg and have her have huge boobs with tons of cleavage. Like, anyone can do that. Even people that can't draw for shit can tack on cleavage and an exposed thigh, and people will go, oh, it's so fucking hot. Like, it's too easy. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's right too. Don't make the bottom of the dress so close to the bottom of the page, and don't flatten it out so much. Thomas brought that up. That is true. But yeah, so just keep in mind, easiest thing in the world is to force sex appeal on stuff. Challenge yourself. Try something a bit more difficult. Let's see. I'm not going to talk about this too much. Much respect for Milan for going back and polishing up the Arthur. If you caught the beginning of this, if not, just watch it on YouTube. You'll hear me explain it. I'm going to give you guys an extra week to do exactly what Milan's already doing at the end of the class, to take what you feel is your worst design and bring it to a point of real finish. In terms of the colors for these, I really like the white and red, so I would say go with one of the top two. I like that white and red idea. The reason I like the white on red idea is because those were Crusader colors, and he was, the go-to guy. He found the Holy Grail and all that stuff. So, like, even though this is in another culture, bringing that white on red over makes it feel very much like a Crusader. It's very noble, it's very pure, it's a cool color combination. This one down here I like a lot too, but it's for the opposite reason. This one makes him look evil, okay? That's the thing. There was a problem with the red one, it made me think of Assassin's Creed. Yeah, I'm just saying, like, if you don't want to use the white, go with one of the reds. These two look good, the two in the corners, diagonally. These look really good too. But I think that white is a really cool element. Something you could do is mix them. You could say that he has a white cape with a hood, and you could put, a red cloak on under it. You don't have to have a white sleeve here. That could be red. Or you could just have a white cape, and it could be a red cloak and a red sleeve. But I think adding the white in somewhere actually makes it very strong. So yeah. And good job going back and reworking this. It's looking a lot better. And hopefully you see that. Let's see. Yeah, this is more polished than the other one I looked at. So let's talk about this real quick. Going into finish, this is very murky. I talked about that before. It's very grayed out. I know you didn't use grayscale for the colors, but I can tell color is a big weakness. So what I want you to do is I want you to have, when you're painting this, I want you to have a window open next to it or on another monitor where you're looking at it in grayscale. And I want you to think about where are the areas of focus. Those should be the areas of the highest contrast, usually. Okay, not always the case. But if I was to grayscale this, the arms and the dress are the brightest part, and everything else sinks towards black. The face is very grayed out. This is all very dark. This is extremely dark, extremely dark. The belt actually looks like it's cut through her, and we're just seeing through to the cape because we're not seeing any light catching on it as it turns. It's just black and it sinks into the background. So think about your value structure because that's going to affect your colors, okay? There should be very bright areas and very dark areas. It shouldn't just be this is all bright and this is all dark. So really think about that. And I know you're adding these lights to make it real spooky and stuff, but if that's going to make your colors seem very washed out, then get rid of it. I don't see any reason for her hands to be kind of a tan peach color and her face to be a white purple color. That's the thing, is like, why, bring that skin color into her face if her hands are going to have it. In terms of the design, I would think about, well, again, we already talked about this last time, and you're falling victim to it again. Think about where the waist is on a woman, because it's not the same as a man. You have the belt here, and then a cross belt going up, presumably over her shoulder, but here's something we got to think about, okay? I know I said I wasn't going to do a paint over, and I'm not going to, but I have to pull this into Photoshop to talk about it. So let me full screen this just to show you what I'm talking about. So if I draw the body under this, there's a couple weird things, and it's only weird because you've covered it up, okay? So let me just grab a, what's a good color? Let me grab like a yellow-green, something, okay. So here's her forearm, okay? Here's her elbow. And then, knowing what we know about anatomy, her shoulder should be here. Okay? Should be about there. Here's her back arm, here's the elbow, it comes up, shoulder should be about there, which means there's the diaphragm, the breasts should be about here, But then we have this, and this, and this. The head's way too small, and the neck is way too long. Can you see what I'm saying? If the shoulders are here, then the head should probably be much bigger, and the neck should be much lower to the body. What you've kind of done is, the other thing you could do is just raise the arms to put them in a better socket. You could have the arms start here, and then come down and bend out like this, and come down and bend out like that. Raising the arms might be a better solution, because then you get to raise the waist, which is the next thing I wanted to talk about. This belt should be here, and the cross belt should go across her breasts. Because having a belt wrap awkwardly around and then under the breasts feels very strange. I've never seen that, ever. Usually cross belts are there to hold something in place like a cape, but this one's going up and then under the breast and around, so what's it connecting to? Is it going under her arm and then around her back? In that case, why is it a cross belt? Because the only thing that keeps a cross belt diagonal is the fact that it's sitting on top of this bone right here. It goes up over the shoulder, and that's what keeps it up. If it's going under her arm, then it would just slip down. There's nothing holding it up, so it wouldn't be diagonal. It would fall because of gravity. So this is what I would do, because then you get to lengthen this thing and have this thing be here. The other thing I would do is I would interrupt the symmetry. It's extremely symmetrical. I would have this thing be diagonal, like that. Change the dress to be diagonal, and then maybe have another one come out, and then have the one at the bottom. Just break up the symmetry so it's not like, I've got a cheerleader skirt with a matching dress on underneath it. It's too repeated. Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing. I like the kind of Venetian masquerade mask. I like this hat. I like the big plume. I like the furs. But the anatomy has to be in place, and the easiest way to fix this is to bring the shoulders up, and thusly the arms up. Hopefully, you're probably not watching. You'll probably have to watch it on YouTube, but hopefully you can see the difference by raising them. that would make to your drawing. It makes her feel a lot more powerful because, you know, the body's kind of slightly turned up now and the arms are in place. It doesn't look like she's had her neck stretched an extra foot. So, yeah. So there you go. That's what I would do. Raise the arms and break up the symmetry and have the cross belt go right across the breasts. There's no reason not to. Just right there. Break it up. Diagonal. That's what you want. Let's see. This one, this one, this one. Someone is trying to copy 6 More Vodka's color palette on their Robin Hood designs. And I can see it. I can see what you're doing. You can't hide from me. Alright. So, I'm going to paint on top of this. Let me ask you a question. This is why I know you didn't draw it. And if you did draw it, you didn't take the time to fix the drawing. You drew it just to draw it, and then you jumped into rendering. Because her face is in 3/4. And her hat is facing forward. So how does that work? If her head is turned this way, then why is the hat pointing right at us? The hat should be turning this way too. You know what I mean? The drawing doesn't make any sense, and it flattens the whole piece. If you had drawn it correctly, the head would be, you know, the hat would be wider here, and then it would go across, and it would be thinner over here, and it would turn in space like that. And it would look like a giant hot dog, because unfortunately that's all this hat looks like. I don't know if this is a culturally accurate thing. I don't know if you pulled this from this culture. This is one of those cases where I'm just going to tell you I don't know what that hat is. If you have a reference for it, please post it on the forum so I can see it. But the hat looks very strange, and I don't think it's helping the design. If I could see what it was based on, I might be able to find a way to make it work, but right now it's extremely awkward. But yeah, it's like, you know, it just feels very strange. Extending this into a staff works. You have a huge tangent here. I think we talked about this last time. I think me and Sam talked about it. It doesn't look like you fixed it yet. This is a huge tangent. I just want to point this out. You've got your cape here, and then you've got your staff here, and it's making a parallel line right there. You feel that tension right there? The cape's not going behind it. They're kind of the same shape. It's really, really tense, and it's very uncomfortable for the eye. What you should do is just have the cape go behind it and be lower. So, like, this is all you really need to do to fix this, is to have the cape be lower, and you're going to have to recrop it. Or what I would even do is just lower the cape completely and sacrifice that swoop, because it's not doing you any favors right now. Have it be more like something like that. Because that tension with the staff is pretty powerful right there. It's distracting the eye like crazy. But yeah, I need to see that hat. Other things, this curl is really plain. It feels really huge. Maybe adding other stuff to the design like this, just to complicate it, just to fill up that negative space of that other color it's sitting on. Because right, it's too stark. It's just this big fat line on top of a big flat area of color, and it's, you know, you want to make it look like it's thought out. Use some kind of pattern to inlay it. But I got to see that hat, and you got to fix the drawing, because the hand, you know, the arms and the hands don't work. The feet are too small. The hat doesn't work in perspective. There's like a huge problem with the shoulder here. I don't know why it's so huge when this one is so sunk in. It's like, it's really imbalanced. You got to get the drawing right before you jump into rendering it. Because right now, it's rendered out and you've got these values and you get this very Six More Vodka style color palette and value range, but it's put on a skeleton that's really, really broken, so it just looks kind of awkward. That's what we're trying to avoid by going back to drawing, so that's what I need you to learn. Get the drawing right. We already talked about Thomas, and he missed it, and that's his loss. This one. Biggest thing with this one is to get rid of the moon. Because, and pay attention here because this is very important, the patterns and the textures you have going on the moon are way more detailed than anything you have going on in the character, and it makes it look digital. This is one of those things where people look at it and they go, oh, it's too digital, I don't like it. That's what they're talking about. It's a photographic texture dropped onto something that's hand-painted. And it doesn't tie it in. It doesn't help it at all. Like, it really doesn't help it. If you want the moon to be in it, paint the moon. Don't just drop a texture on it. That's lazy and it looks like shit. Paint the moon, paint some clouds around it, give it some atmosphere, but don't just have this very Photoshop perfected circle, texture dropped in it, soft brush because of light. Like, it looks like shit. Paint the moon, paint some clouds around it, paint some atmosphere, do it all by hand because you did your character by hand. What I'm trying to say is, when you paint by hand, there's inherently flaws because nobody's perfect at painting. Even the best people in the world aren't perfect at painting. So, if you hand paint a character and you put something photographic behind it, all the mistakes you made in your painting jump out because you're comparing it to something so crisp and so computer-generatedly perfect that automatically they become night and day. It's just like, oh wow, I can tell that that is real and the thing in the front is not. Now, in terms of design, I actually like your design a lot. I don't like this staff. I have no idea what's going on with the staff. It just feels very random. But I love this headdress a lot with the pearls and the little circles hanging and the very patterned sides. I like the flat furry top. I like the Siberian tiger patterns in the sides. I like how you brought this design from the head down into the sides. I'm assuming that these are seashells. I think they're seashells. And my question would be, if she's tiger themed, why is she wearing the seashells? I don't mind the seashell shape if there's data in it that tells me what it is. But if she's tiger themed, I would say, like, why aren't those claws? Why aren't those, something relative to the tiger? Why aren't those metal studs inlaid into her fabric with little carvings of tiger heads in them? Basically, because there's so many of them and because they're bright, set against this very dark kind of mahogany red, they jump out. And we go, oh, that's the first thing we see is this repeated pattern. And they look like seashells, and I don't quite know why they would be shells if she's tiger themed. So it's just one of those things where you want a unified design. If there's something in the narrative that says she's of the sea, then yeah, that could work. But right now she's very clearly from a very tundra frozen place. So that doesn't really work for me. Probably the biggest thing that doesn't work for me are these straight lines you have going down the middle. They're all perfectly parallel to one another, and it makes it look like someone's building a ladder going up to her fucking crotch. Doesn't make sense. It's just like, if you're going to put straps in a dress, they're not going to be perfectly parallel all the way up. It looks like you constructed these using the line tool, and that's just bad. It's one of those things that jumps out as too perfect, so it makes the rest of the design look like shit. It's too digital. So if she's turning in 3/4 and she's got one hip, popped out, then these should be diagonal because they're going to be turning with the body over to the right. So they should all be diagonal, leaning up to the right. And if this hip is higher than this hip, they should all be double diagonal, you know what I mean? Like, even more, because this side of the body's higher than the other one. So redo those. You have to redo those. And either get rid of the seashells or turn them into something more relevant, because right now they feel very strange. In terms of the staff, it just looks like a piece of wood with a stone in it. I don't know why this has anything to do with the character. None of the tiger themes or the very kind of like Russian tundra themes are in it. It just looks like a fantasy stick that any witch would have in any fantasy painting in the world. It doesn't feel like it belongs to her. Um, and one last thing, I feel like the anatomy could be. I feel like the character could be a little bit taller. This is a common thing that everybody seems to be doing. Keep in mind that even if you draw perfect anatomy under the character and it looks flawless, if it looks awkward when you put it on the page, sometimes you have to skew that for the sake of the piece. Because right now she feels very short, and it's because the legs aren't quite long enough. If her thigh is right here, then that means her knee should be right about here, which means that her foot should be down at the bottom of the page. You know what I mean? Even if you've drawn it and you think it's perfect, when you look at it when it's done, if it feels stunted, you have to change it. And this does feel stunted. So extend the bottom of the dress, make her feel a little more tall, a little more impressive. It doesn't make her any more masculine, it just makes her feel more regal and more powerful. Because right now it's, I understand that it's cocked, but if it's cocked, then this foot should be closer to us and this one should be farther behind, and the bottom of the dress should be diagonal. It's just, it's that thing that all of you tend to do. Everybody, tends to in the beginning anyway, where you have this page fear at the bottom, where the bottom of the dress is very parallel to the bottom of the page, and you push it all the way down. So the big thing to fix is that moon. Get rid of it. She doesn't need it. If you do want to keep the moon in there for lighting's sake, hand paint the moon, make it way smaller, and make the light come from the clouds around it. Because that moon is just comically huge, and it just looks digital. I don't mind the moon being there, but you gotta paint it the same way you painted the character, or it just makes everything you worked hard on look like total crap. But I do like her design, aside from the seashells and the staff. It's a good job on that. Let's see. Milan. Put that over there, because I know you have another one up here. Taurus. I thought you had. Did I miss something? Did you not? Did you not do a colored one that you decided on? Or were you waiting for feedback to do that? I thought I saw one in here, but I might be wrong. The high-res link on the post. Oh, just don't do that anymore. Just post it as a JPEG, even if it's not high-res. Because now I can't find it. Is it with the morganes? Yeah, don't do that anymore. Just post it at like 1,000 big. Okay. So I don't need to look at this really. Okay, so you didn't decide on a color yet is what I'm asking. That's all I'm asking, is if you decided on a color yet. Okay. You have not decided. Well, I think number 4 and number 5 are my favorites. Probably 4, 5, and 8. I really like those blues you have in 5. But I also really like number 4 for the reds. I would say try and... I would say go with number 5. I think I like 5 the most. People in the chat can feel free to weigh in. For me, it's a tie between 5 and 8. Yeah, why don't we go with 8? Number 2 is too black on white. It feels very Tim Burton kind of cop outish, like it's black on white. She's evil. Ooh, like. Uh, I agree that 1 and 3 are weak. 4 is pretty good. 5 is pretty good. 6 has too much white. 7 is, yeah, it's just kind of boring. It's too monochromatic. So it's between 4, 5, and 8 for me. I'd be happy with any of those. I like number 8 because it has the blue, the bluish gray. It has the black, but then it brings the red in around the head and the breasts. But I do like 4 and 5 as well. So I'm not going to tell you which one to do. I think any of those are good. I think 8 has the most color in it, but in terms of mood, 4 and 5 are probably stronger. I'm going to let you pick. But the one thing I want to talk about, let's see, you fixed the fire, so good job on that. It looks a lot stronger now. You have to keep the fire in mind when you light her. She's going to be lit from a couple different places. So the bottom of the dress is going to be catching some light. The body's going to be catching some light. The face is going to be lit from forward and underneath, so it's going to be real creepy. If you need help lighting her when you start rendering it, just post it on the forum and ask for it, and I'll do a quick paint over. I have no problem helping you get the lighting down for this because you want it to look good. You want it to look good. But yeah, good stuff. In terms of her design, me and you already went through her design pretty extensively, so I don't really have any crits. That's really, we already settled all that. The only thing I see that you could improve is that the dress and the scarf and then the back scarf are all very parallel. It kind of flattens it, having straight line, straight line, straight line. Adding, throwing this off to one side, it doesn't matter which one, just to give it some motion, like, the motion of her body is making the scarf move around, might be interesting. Making it look like there's a little more movement in the dress, or that the fire, the fanning of the flame is kind of blowing the dress out. Raising the back of the dress diagonally so it's kind of fluttering out, kind of mimicking what the scarf around the head's doing. Just adding more motion to the cloth like she's dancing, I think would be a little more exciting. You can do that in your paint over, though. That's the thing, like, that's a very small fix. You don't need to go back to line to do that unless you want to. The rest of the body looks great. I'm really happy with the design. We hammered all this out already, though, so you already know that. You got this out of the way pretty quick. So now it's just pushing it to finish. So good job, and good luck. Add some more motion. But yeah. Tadas. This is easily your best piece in the class so far. Easily. The anatomy is way better than your other two. The colors are way better than your other two. And it's just, it looks like you're a lot more comfortable working this way. I don't know if that's true. I hope it's true. But there's things to improve, but far and away with your Merlin and then your Arthur, this one is way stronger than the two of those. I really like the palette you've got going on here. I would say, I might be wrong, but I feel like her skin should be darker if she's Egyptian. I feel like her skin should be darker and her features should be a bit more foreign. She still very much looks like a Caucasian lady who you darkened the skin on a bit. I feel like the nose and the eyes especially could use some work. Make her look very, you want her to look of the culture, because right now she looks like an Italian woman wearing Egyptian clothes. It doesn't look Egyptian to me. It doesn't look North African. It looks like Southern Europe. It's a totally different look. It's not a desert person. It's like I live in the Mediterranean. It's that kind of thing. She's almost kind of Spanish looking. But that's minor. That's just the features of the face, and you can do a pass on the skin pretty easy. The snake, I don't know if you made it bigger. I still think it could be bigger. I keep saying this to you, and I'm sorry. I still think the snake's head could be bigger. And I think the body could have a little more girth around the hand and maybe that first coil. Have it thin out towards the back, but I feel like the head could be a bit more impressive. Because I still can't tell it's a snake at first glance. I have to kind of look to see the snake. I love the color palette that you've gone with. These very, vibrant blues against this orange with the red working into the scales. I don't have a lot of crits for this, which is really good. Um, yeah, it's a good job. I think you need to fix this hand. This hand it's too small and it's drawn kind of awkwardly. It's not really hugging the hip. I think all you got to do is take a photo of a girl you might know holding her hip this way, and then use the hand, or find a photo of someone doing it and try to copy it. This hand feels a bit more natural. This one feels very kind of stunted. This whole the whole forearm here feels kind of stunted. It feels very thin and very very bony and small. But I mean, that being said, the bottom of the dress could be wider. It still feels very, you've got a weird thing going on where the scales closest to us are smaller than the ones farther away. This is a wrapping form thing, so like, let me just show you real quick. It's easier if I draw over it. You'll see what I'm talking about better. This is a foreshortening thing with patterns that a lot of people miss that I want all of you to watch out for, because it's like a death trap. So, okay, so here's your design. What you should do, here's the thing. I'm going to do this in white so you can see it. If the curve of the dress is this, and the curve of the dress below it is this, and the curve of where the feet are placed is this, then the curve of this white part should be the same. It's not, but it's close. But then these scales, you're doing this weird thing where suddenly the scales are on flat lines. Why are the scales on flat lines? The bottom of all the scales fall on parallel lines. So what you should do is go, okay, well the deepest part of the curve is here, so this one has to be here, and this one has to be here. This one's here, this one's here, and because they're going away from us, they get thinner as they go to the sides. So we should actually see another scale over here, the lip of another one. Here, 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 there, there. Does this make sense to you guys? Do you see what I'm trying to say? You need the biggest ones to be the ones that are closest, and then you need them to taper off accordingly to the curve of the dress, because they're round. It's a round form. See what I mean? You want to put it on a round skeleton, all right? Because when you don't and they're just flat, that breaks that beautiful curve that you have going around her. That's what you want, is that curve. So let's see. I would, if I were you, I would bring the dress out to about here on the sides. And then I would bring the blue one out under it to the point where we don't really see the edge of it, just have it wrap around it. I would do something like this. And I would have the white come down like this. You've got this cool diagonal up here slashing the body, and I kind of want that diagonal line to run through on the bottom. So I would add, like, you know, a tied scarf that's kind of hanging down here, because this feels too tame. Having the whole bottom of the white be the same, you know, length feels kind of tame to me. So I would have, you know, like a scarf over here, maybe one in the back that you can see coming around from behind her, kind of catching, something like that. Just something to break up the very orderly way you've drawn the white. I mean, these are all minor tweaks. Maybe raising it a bit on this side. That could be cool. And then you have the red. But yeah, so then, you know, if I paint over this, just to show you again real quick. If I paint over this like this and get rid of all your scales for the most part, then I grab your orange. What you want is scale here, 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 there, following this circular form. That's what you want. You want it to follow the curve of the dress. But yeah, so let me just try something here. I'm just gonna go to Google, good old Google, and Egyptian woman. And maybe I'm wrong about the color of the skin. You might be right. I just want to check and make sure. I guess you're right. I guess I'm wrong. I thought the skin would be darker. But apparently that is not the case. So, congratulations. However, I will say that the skin is the wrong color, even if it's the right brightness. I like the scraggly hair. I don't want the hair to be straight. Oh, there is one thing you gotta fix, actually. Hold on while I fix this. This doesn't go low enough. He made the hair ragged because she's supposed to be from a ruined house. I get why he made the hair ragged. I think it works for the character. I mean, you could make it straight if you want, but I don't think it hurts. The curve of this needs to come lower. See what I mean? You want it to, because it was making a tangent where the bottom of this touched the top of the blue dress. See that there? That shared edge that goes through the necklace? That's too tame. Have her thing come over it. Just have it come over it, because it would. This would overlap the dress 100% of the time. These things were very big. They had a lot of weight. So do that. That'll make it look stronger too, because it'll add to this kind of left-right push up to the shoulder. And then, you know, I'd make the snake bigger. I'd be like, yo, it's a cobra. Here's the head. Here's very clearly the edge of the cobra fan. And there's the one in the back side. You can clearly see that it's a cobra, not just a snake that's wide on top. You know, here's the chest. And then if you want to give it the eyes, you know, have the light catch in. Maybe give it a little hint of red where the tongue's coming out. But yeah, I'd make it like that big. Cobras are pretty big snakes. Fully grown cobra is a pretty large snake. So yeah, I'd do that. But anyway, let's see. And I'd make the tail a bit longer too. Just because you can have it come down and go towards that cool negative space between the baubles. But yeah, making the snake bigger I think is for the best. So, I mean, if I click that on and off, do you see just what that little bit does? Widening out the bottom by adding some hanging cloth and widening the skirts and then making the snake bigger, bumping up the shoulder thing. Just, you know, those little touches make the design a lot stronger. The bottom has a lot more weight now. Because you want it to feel like an isosceles triangle, and I'm still trying to get you out of this habit of drawing the characters inside of a very, very square rectangle that doesn't really deviate. And, you know, even though this is your best piece by far, she's still inside that very safe rectangle. So let's break that. Let's widen the bottom and make it very clear that it's a triangle. But, yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Has a lot more weight now. The scales are curving with the dress. But, this is definitely going to be the best one you've done for the class so far, so I look forward to seeing your final render. Push this one to finish. And something you should all be doing, I think I've talked about this before. I think when you finish your work, have an artist that you admire that you're looking at. Don't copy their style or their rendering necessarily, but copy their level of finish. If you want to be a character designer like Jason Chan, make your pieces look as close to finished as his are. If you want to be Alexi, Look at how his level of finish is different from Jason's and push towards that. A lot of people don't know what finished is, so they work on things too long, or they work on them in the wrong way, or they get lost and they go, I don't know how to finish this. You should all be looking at someone who you have your eyes set on. You should all have a target artist where you're like, I want this to be as good as this guy I look up to. And that's going to change over time. You might want to be Rigney right now. Maybe later you're going to want to be Marco. Maybe you want to be Dave. Maybe after that you'll go, oh, you know what, Jason Chan does this thing really well that Dave doesn't do. It's going to change a million times. But push your stuff to the level of finish of the guy you have your eyes set on. That's the thing. Because everybody, there's no shame in doing that. You want to have a finish line that you can run towards, and putting your eyes on an artist is a really good way to establish that finish line. It's a really good way to know when something's done and when something's not done enough. Anyway, speaking of done, I'm finished. So what's going to happen, I put on the forum, if you go back and read, you have a week to finish these. I know Christmas is coming up next week. If you guys are busy, don't worry, I've allotted for that. These are due in a week, as finished as you can possibly get them. I'm going to introduce Mordred. I'm going to have a week for you to just do sketches and thumbnails for Mordred. It's going to be a very lax week. Then you're going to do your drawing and colors of him. Then you're going to have a week to finish him. And there's going to be a final week where you can take a character that you thought sucked, redo it or push it to finish, or add the crits that you didn't get to work into it. You can do that. Take your weakest piece, make it your strongest piece, whatever you want to do with that free week to get them all looking like on a uniform level. The idea is that in a portfolio, right now the most recent one is the strongest for almost all of you. The idea is that you can take that extra week to make your weakest one look as good as this one. So in a portfolio, there are 2 very strong characters instead of 1, and then 3 crap ones. And then I'm going to open a Q&A when this is all finished of what you guys liked in the class, what you were hoping to get that you didn't get, ways that I fucked up, things that I could have taught that I didn't. And then we're going to have a final class where I look at everyone's work back to back to back to back, talk about what people learned, what they missed, what to look forward to in the future. I'm going to introduce my next class. That's all going to be great, but that's not for another 3 or 4 weeks. So finish this. Mordred next week. Good job, everybody. This is probably the best character from all of you so far. So keep thinking about that. The hard work comes first mentality. The drawing, the proportions, the values, all that stuff first before you jump into rendering. Get all that hard stuff out of the way because I think it's working for all of you. Goodbye. Thanks for coming. This will be on YouTube as usual. So I'll put it on the forums once it's uploaded. Goodbye.